Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our ancestral and eternal homeland, the Judean hills and the land of Israel. Today, I am with attorney Michael Weiser, who has taken on a very important case about an IDF soldier who, out of nowhere, became the target of a vicious anti-Israel boycott, divestment, sanctions campaign that totally turned her life upside down. And Michael is an attorney now working on the case with this past IDF soldier fighting back. So welcome, attorney Michael Weiser.
Thank you, Avi. Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure having you. I mean, I just saw information about this case that you posted yesterday online on your Facebook page, and this is super critical on many, many levels. So first, why don't we understand, how did you get involved in this case? I understand you're involved as an attorney for national security issues, for personal injury issues. How did you get involved in this case to stand up for this ex-IDF soldier?
Well, that's right, Avi. And I think that the way I got involved with this case was really quite by accident. Shurat Hadin had sent out an email to their email list. I had actually attended one of their attorney seminars in 2016. So I guess I'm a graduate of their course. And they, on occasion, they send out calls for help to their graduates in certain areas of law or in certain areas of the world or jurisdictions, and basically, this email came to me asking about whether I knew anyone who was in California who could help with this case, and I got a description of the case, and I started doing some preliminary research about the issues involved in the case, and it just naturally grew from there, where I was kind of the natural person to be selected for this case.
Okay, well, and now that we know why you got involved, which is wonderful because this is so important, what exactly is this case about? I gave a little intro, but love to hear more details from you.
Well, this case is kind of unique for a variety of reasons. It seems to fit so well with me because, on the one hand, it is a tort in that it is defamation on the one hand, but it's also got elements of terrorism. You know, you have people who are making threats online. It's kind of got that new frontier of cyberspace feel because the threats came via online, Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, things like that. So it's kind of a coming together of a tort case with terrorism, with cyber. It's got all these kind of different elements to it, but it's also got an additional challenge, and that is it has to do with the statute of limitations. Which we can get into in a moment and get into more detail. But that's the short answer of the kind of case that this is.
And what exactly happened to this girl? We're talking about an IDF soldier who, if I understood correctly, she served in the spokesperson's unit. She did not serve as a fighting soldier, but yet a picture was taken of her holding a gun in uniform and then used as a campaign, how she was the Israeli soldier who killed a nurse on the protesting on the Gaza border. So can you give us more detail? What exactly happened?
Sure. I think we have to kind of go back to the beginning to understand what exactly happened with this case. First of all, you know, what happened was the soldier in question, the plaintiff in this case, she was already out of the IDF for 2.5 years when a defamatory post was made against her by a BDS supporter who is the defendant in this case. And this defamatory post was made in June of 2018. So it's already a couple of years ago. And the plaintiff was already out of the IDF for a number of years. You know, what had happened was in June of 2018, a nurse named Razan al-Najjar was killed while allegedly trying to help protesters on the border with Gaza and Israel. As you may know, during that time, there were awful riots called the Great March of Return that were sponsored by Hamas every Friday, in which there were terrorists, there were protesters, there were agitators, there were all kinds of people on the border. It was a violent scene. The burning of tires, use of Molotov cocktails, IEDs, guns, everything that you can imagine going on there with these terrorists trying to breach the fence with the intent of murdering Israelis on the other side. So you also had an IDF position along the border defending it, trying to prevent these terrorists from breaching the border. And mixed among all of these people on the border in the confusion were civilians and people like this nurse who were there to help people, but who ultimately, unfortunately, in the fog of war, got injured or killed, as happens in these unfortunate circumstances. Now, what happened was when Razan al-Najjar was killed on the border, it happened under confusing circumstances, and there was an IDF investigation. From what I've seen, it was difficult to determine exactly what happened there because it was such a mess. It was such a confusion. People tried to piece it together. The New York Times tried to piece it together, and basically it looks like it might have been someone might have shot off their rifle by mistake. It might have been negligence. Who knows what? But this nurse ended up getting killed. But the story really begins for this case with this defendant named Suhair Nafal making the post on June 1st, 2018, in which, and this is where it gets interesting, it wasn't a straight out defamation in the sense that she said that the plaintiff shot and killed this nurse. It was implied. She implied it. And what the post said was, it essentially had a banner on top saying good versus evil in a hashtag. And it said, on the left is an American Zionist from Boston, naming the plaintiff, Rebecca Rum, with zero ties to occupied Palestine, who joined the Israeli military to participate in the ethnic cleansing of the indigenous people of Palestine. And it mentions that featured in a post on the IDF Facebook page from 4 years ago. And I'll get to why that's important in a second. And then below that, it says, on the right, Palestinian nurse Razan al-Najjar with family ties going back hundreds of years to her land of Palestine, shot in the chest and back, executed by an Israeli sniper while volunteering as a paramedic to save the lives of injured Palestinians peacefully protesting in Gaza, demanding basic human rights after 70 miserable years of brutal colonization. Rest in peace, Razan, and then hashtag this is Israel and hashtag free Palestine. But what you have to understand is below this text, on the left, as alluded to in the post, is a picture of the plaintiff, Rebecca Rum, in full military IDF uniform, smiling and holding an M16 rifle. And on the right is a picture of Razan al-Najjar, the Palestinian nurse, dressed in a white nurse's uniform. So what happened?
Are you able to send me those actual screenshots of those posts?
not only can I do that, I can send you the complaint that explains everything in the case.
Okay, wonderful.
You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But essentially, what's interesting about this post is that like I said, it's not a flat out saying that that Rebecca did it, that she executed it. It's implied, but it's done in such a way that nobody could get any other take on what she was saying, basically. I mean, Rebecca's picture is juxtaposed with the nurse. It mentions that she went there to participate in the ethnic cleansing of the indigenous people of Palestine. It has text saying that Razan al-Najjar was executed by an Israeli sniper. And what this post did was it set in motion a chain of events where this post was shared thousands of times. How did this happen? It happened because Suhair Nafal, the defendant in this case, has 15,000 followers on Facebook and approximately 5,000 friends as well. So her followers and friends basically ran with this narrative that she put out there, this implication that Rebecca had murdered this nurse, and it was shared all over the world. And then another website, Freedom for Gaza, another Facebook page, I should say, with 100,000 followers, shared it some more. I think approximately 15,000 shares. Another Facebook page in Malaysian shared it another 25,000 times, saying that Rebecca had murdered this nurse. So you can see very quickly how this spread around the world. And from our research, what we found was that millions of people saw this post, and essentially similar posts to it were made in Arabic, in Turkish, in French, in Malay, many languages all over the world. So this thing spread like wildfire, and the result was Rebecca, and not only Rebecca, but her family and her friends got thousands of death threats and threatening messages.
So what is the case? Love to hear the legal side of this. Who exactly is being sued or taken to court, and on what grounds?
Well, the causes of action, first of all, are against, really there's only one defendant, and that's Suhair Nafal, who, as best as we can tell, it originated with her. So she's the responsible party in our eyes. Now, she's being sued for two causes of action. The first one is libel per se, and the other one is false light. False light is pretty self-explanatory. It's putting the plaintiff in a false light, which was done here, casting her as an executioner of an innocent nurse. But the libel per se is kind of interesting in the sense that we say there's libel and there's libel per se. And libel is obviously anything that's untrue, that's conveyed to, a third party, that's untrue about or concerning the plaintiff. But the per se category is interesting because, if it's a per se category, then damages are assumed, that there's damage to reputation. Now, it can be for things like, damage in business. It can be things at common law that was, being an unchaste woman. And it can be for being a criminal, which is what this is about. Essentially, our client has been called a war criminal. And so damages are assumed in a case like this, and it's libel per se.
And how is Rachel Rum? That is, again, the IDF soldier, the American who made Aliyah, moved to Israel, became a soldier, served as a soldier, and she's the one being who was targeted with this. How is she going through this whole ordeal?
Well, Rebecca has been going through this for the past 2.5 years, and I think you'll see in the complaint, the thing is, when this first happened, she went to to the security services, the police, and the consensus was really, well, this will blow over. Give it, give it a few days, let things blow over. I have to tell you, it's been 2.5 years, and the last complaints I saw were, there were still incidences of threats this past July. I haven't asked if there have been more since August, September, but there were ones in, all of this year, June, July as well. They're in the complaint. I make mention of it, that in June, and as soon as, as late as June and July, this was still ongoing. And she still,
what do you mean by complaints? Who's complaining about what?
Well, I'm sorry, not complaints, but threats rather.
Oh, ongoing. Rebecca Rum has been receiving ongoing threats, even to this day, 2.5 years later.
Yes. There's still threats ongoing, and she's still afraid when she goes, especially outside of Israel. She goes to a college campus. She's afraid of, telling people who she is, at the risk of someone recognizing her and going off on her, or threatening her, or God forbid, attacking her. So these are all concerns that are ongoing. And the problem is that, in places that have the Arabic language, or the Farsi language, or the Malaysian language websites, we estimate that there's still between 50 and 100 websites that have not taken this libel down, even though it has been widely debunked, around the world by various other websites, by many sources, but it's still floating out there. And this could be something that affects her for
forever,
20 years, the rest of her life. Who knows? It's very, very serious.
Does she feel like a security threat to her life even?
Well, look, when something is ongoing for this long, I guess, it's hard to say. I guess you get used to it in a sense, but there's always that underlying discomfort. And there are going to be things that heighten that discomfort. Just filing this lawsuit and coming with this lawsuit could rekindle the threats. People see this, could send threats and rekindle the whole thing all over again. And don't forget, it's not just her. It's her family. It's her friends. This whole thing permeates every aspect of her life, her work, everything.
Yeah, I imagine that it was a big, even though you mentioned that she continuously receives threats, even today, 2.5 years later, it must have been a big decision to once again go public with this as a court case, to open it up again to be given even renewed life and even more threats to continue on. Not an easy decision.
Well, it's not an easy decision, but there's also, there's a counterbalancing interest. She doesn't want this to happen to anybody else. None of us want this to happen to anybody else. It's a terrible thing, but something has to be done, and a message has to be sent, I think, to the BDS type people that they're not going to get away with this, that we're going to fight them, and it's just unacceptable.
Do you believe that if you win this case, then that would be precedent to stop potential future libel against other people by BDS organizations? Or is this just going to be a win and they're going to continue doing what they're doing?
Well, I think it'll be a win, and it might have some effect. Really, this is kind of a case of first impression for a variety of reasons, which I can get into. But basically, a lot of this case is just sending a message and putting it out there, and saying, we're going to go after you. And she's got a lot of followers, so we hope that some of her followers eventually see what we're doing and are maybe deterred by this and thinking twice, especially if we win. We have an obstacle in that, there's a problem with statute of limitations, where in California, where we're suing, the statute of limitations is only 1 year. And this case, the plaintiff was aware, and the statute starts running from when the plaintiff is, knew or should have known. And that was back in June of 2018. So the California statute of limitations is expired. But what makes this a case of first impression, and what we're trying to do, and what it says in the complaint as well, is that we want to apply the 7-year statute of limitations law for Israel to bring these causes of action in a California court. And we believe we have the case law authority to argue that point and to win. And
that is very interesting. I never heard of such a thing. Why would they even consider that? They have their own statute of limitations. What argument do you have for them to accept the 7-year statute of Israel?
Well, I'm not going to go into too many details about it because I don't want to show my cards. We haven't argued it yet.
Got it.
I promise to do a follow-up program if you like, assuming we win, or even if we don't win. I think that's why I think, win or lose, this is still an important case. Okay. But suffice it to say, I feel good about the case law that I've seen. And it is very interesting because when I first saw this case and I saw it, I said, wow, this case is defective. I don't know if we can do it. I don't know if we can overcome this. But, I have a strange attraction to difficult problems. And the more close to impossible they are, the more attractive they seem to be to me. Mm-hmm. So I started just digging and researching. And what I found kind of gave me hope. And I just did some more digging. And I said, you know what? Bit by bit, I started to put it together, and I presented my research to Shurat Hadin, who, as you know, originally presented the case to me. And they have some wonderful lawyers over there in their own right. And we kind of compared notes. We kind of compared cases. And so based on that, we decided to take a shot and proceed.
Very interesting. I definitely do hear the point you're trying to make. Win or lose, this is an important case, and sets precedent and sends a message. Well, Michael, thank you so much for your work on this case. Is there anything any of the viewers can do?
Well, I would say I'm going to give a plug to Shurat Hadin that if it's a great organization, and so if they're so inclined, make a donation to Shurat Hadin, support their work. I think it's really important. Be informed about the case. I'm going to be posting regular updates when something important happens. And really the next, important thing will be how the defendant responds to the lawsuit. And then our next move, which I think is going to be arguing the statute issue. And what will happen then is, if we lose, then I'll explain kind of what happened and what the theory was behind what we were trying to do, and because it could happen again, and so another argument might come, it might arise, and if we win, it'll be very exciting for a variety of reasons, because it will, I think it will help in not only the state courts where we brought this case, but also in the federal courts as well, which I'll explain at a later time, but I think that, certainly for state courts, it's a case of first impression. So we know that BDS is all over campuses in the United States. So this case or its precedent could be applicable to other states, even if it happens to be not California, but another state, Michigan, New York, Illinois, wherever. So that's why I think it does have great importance, and that's why I decided to join on and really put my full effort into this case.
Got it. Well, as a fellow IDF soldier and as a fellow Jew, please pass on words of support to Rachel Rum on this ongoing case. We hope you help her win the case. But looking forward to your updates.
Thanks, Avi. Thank you for having me. And I will convey your good wishes to Rebecca.
Thank you. And I don't know if she wants to go public talking about it as well at some point in time. If she does, it would be a pleasure to speak directly to her. Yeah, all according to your strategy and what makes sense in her comfort level.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we know, like, just as the libel of the actual post was filled with lies, a post of lies, not only lying about Rebecca Rum's involvement because it wasn't even her, but every single thing about what the person who made the post about Rebecca, blaming her for what she blamed her to do, all filled with lies. I definitely think you're going to have business in the future with continuous libels. I do hope that you succeed in stopping it so that they're scared. I'm not so optimistic about that because their whole case is built on lies. But once again, best of luck to you in this case.
Thank you, Avi. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Michael Weiser. Everyone, I just want to thank each and every one of you for joining us for another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our ancestral and eternal homeland. Here you just learned about this case with Rebecca Rum. Innocent Jew, served proudly as an IDF soldier, no connection whatsoever to the incident on the Gaza border, and yet she's become the target of being harassed, herself, her family, her friends. And here, thankfully, we have attorney Michael Weiser together with Shuat Hadin taking the case of libel against the initial poster who made the libel case against Rebecca Rum, really turning her life upside down with continuous threats, even today, two plus years later. Please, as Michael said, if you are so attuned, make a donation to Shuat Hadin to support the wonderful lawfare work that they do, like this case against trying to stand up for the libel against Rebecca Rum. And signing off from the eternal and ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, this is Avi Abel for another Pulse of Israel. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Shalom and take care.